Mine is definitely my first fix and flip ever. It was not a great deal. It's the only one I ever lost money on, so that's exactly why it stands out in my head. I like to call it like an expensive learning lesson. But it taught me about partners, and doing due diligence and understanding what each partner is going to be responsible for moving forward. So I've done several fix and flips since then, but that is the only one that I ever did lose money on. So that will forever stand out in my mind as very memorable. Welcome back to another episode of the Estate of Wealth podcast for your weekly dose of market updates and expert insights. I'm Barney alongside Aaron and Eric, and today we're going to be asking some interesting personal questions, and then we're going to jump into a few current news articles surrounding the real estate industry, and we're eventually going to get around to talking about interest rates, so stick around for that. But let's jump right in. So thanks, guys, for being on here. Let's jump right to the first question. Aaron, I think, is up first here. If you could live in a fictional home from a movie or TV show, which one would it be and why?
I'm so glad that we're kicking the podcast off like this. This was one of the cool questions that I liked going back to pick out. I'm a big fan of the old school James Bond movies, and some of the villains have these massive, elaborate homes. But I picked one of the more, I would say, amendable homes. It's the Elrod House in Palm Springs. It's the mid-century modern that really did it for me, and some of the sweeping views of the valley from that home. So that is
Tony Stark-esque.
Yeah, very Tony Stark-esque. A lot of concrete in the building materials, and I think it just plays really well off the scenery that's around it too.
Great choice. Eric, what do you got for us? What is your fictional favorite home?
I don't do favorites. It's too hard to pick one, but I think one would be really cool to stay at, which I actually just saw a reel of it in Washington, is somebody created a hobbit hole out there, and it looks awesome. I don't know what the height restrictions are because I'm 6'6", so I might have like a Gandalf problem in that thing, but I think a hobbit hole would be really cool. It's just like, reminds me a lot of the English countryside, and then it's just like very ingrained into nature. So I think the concept is really neat, and I'd give that a shot, see how it goes. I'd probably hit my head too much and then have to live somewhere else, but it'd be worth it.
Well, you could increase the ceiling heights as well.
True, I just gotta like dig deeper at that point. Yeah,
I dig that. We're gonna bring Barney's Barbecue over to the Hobbit, the extra large Hobbit mansion. I love it.
Barney, did you pick one out for yourself?
I did, and I have to hands down go with Wayne Manor from Batman, and it absolutely comes with a Batcave as well too. I need all the tech. I just like that you have an option, second entrance as well too. But I don't know if I'd want it in Gotham City per se. Maybe in Boulder, right up on the hillside by Flagstaff, just kind of overlooking the valley. I think it'd be really neat.
I love it.
All right, next question up here. What's the funniest or most memorable real estate deal you've ever been a part of? Eric, why don't you start this one out?
The most memorable one, it wasn't particularly funny. It was just very complex. It was when we added 25 individual condos and one seller financing deal to the portfolio I manage. And we also had another buyer join us as well who wanted to take some of the units on the handshake agreement. So I ended up signing a personal guarantee for $1 million because I was that confident we were going to pull it off. So that was the most interesting and the one that sticks out to me the most, because I think it was just the highest risk I've ever done to get the portfolio really up and running. So, yeah.
All right. And you pulled it off. Excellent. Nice.
Yeah. We still own some of those units today. We've been selling a few of them off to move into a different asset class, just to getting away from condos and HOAs, but it served its purpose well.
Absolutely. All part of the strategy. Aaron, how about you? What's the most memorable or one of your favorite real estate deals you've ever been a part of?
I'm gonna go with the funniest, I guess. I mean, in the moment, it was comical to me, although I'm sure the two tenants that we're dealing with, it wasn't very funny. But in a past property management firm that I was working at, we had an apartment complex where the downstairs neighbor had just got done with laundry, hung everything out to dry. She was going about her day. The neighbor upstairs had let the dog out to the balcony to use the bathroom, and then when the dog used the bathroom, it ruined the clean clothes below. So just fielding some of those texts and those calls and trying to smooth over that situation still sticks out in my head as one of the more memorable experiences.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. That's something that would stand on my head as well too. That's interesting. Yeah, and then for me, mine is definitely my first fix and flip ever. It was not a great deal. It's the only one I ever lost money on, so that's exactly why it stands out in my head. I like to call it like an expensive learning lesson. But it taught me about partners, and doing due diligence and understanding what each partner is going to be responsible for moving forward. So I've done several fix and flips since then, but that is the only one that I ever did lose money on. So that will forever stand out in my mind as very memorable.
Yeah.
Awesome. So next question up. If you had to describe your investing style in terms of a movie genre, comedy, drama, action, etc., what would it be and why?
I love this question, by the way. I think off the top of my head, the genre that I am going to pick is going to be the rom-com. It sweeps you off your feet and you fall in love with real estate, and then things start to get a little comical. And as you kind of explore the different avenues of real estate and the different lessons that you'll learn, things can become a little comical. But yeah, I would say the rom-com is going to be the genre I'm going with.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. And for those of you who have seen Ted Lasso out there, I always like the idea of rom-communism, as a really great outlook on life. Because, if stuff is a little messed up, then it's only the middle of the movie and we haven't even gotten to the good part yet. So yeah, I love that. Eric, how about you? What's your drama, comedy, action style?
It's definitely drama and suspense, not like horror or anything. It's just, there's so much buildup and there's so much due diligence and time and effort that goes into it. And then I'd say more often than not, it doesn't execute fully. So there's just a lot of buildup, a lot of like work and grinding it out. And sometimes it works. And a lot of times you got to move on to the next thing just because the numbers don't work or there's something that falls through in negotiations. But yeah, it's definitely, for me, it's just drama and suspense.
Well, I think you could throw thriller in there as well. The suspense and thriller kind of goes hand in hand.
That was going to be mine. Mine's more thriller. I like the suspense. I like the action, but it is a lot of high drama. So I'll be on there. And I was gonna point out too that that testament to who you are as an investor person, Eric, because essentially I feel like you miss 100% of the shots you don't make. And as a good operator, you've got to be fielding these deals, and it's like, for every 10 that you look at, is one's going to be a yes. So I'm totally there with you as well too. I think it's definitely it's it's up and down. Sometimes it's great, and then all of a sudden the next day it's not so great. So I'm definitely with you there. But I go more thriller because I get excited. I don't know. I love the chase. I love the deal. I love the negotiation. So I'm with you. Yep.
I'm glad I don't know. Every time I hear thriller, I just think horror, and I'm like, yeah, you don't want to be in a horror real estate situation. Like that is, no one's having a good time at all.
And that's absolutely fair because I'm with you too. It's not a horror situation. I'm more just thrilled to be here, and doing these deals. I think we all have very interesting, creative day-to-day lifestyles with this investment strategy. I mean, I know Eric, you're also in the military as well. You're in Space Force. I know Aaron is full-time rent by the room, and we'll get to that in 1 second. And then I do real estate and fix and flip. So all in each of our own, we're full-time real estate. So it's always interesting, to talk about the mentality of how we're dealing with these things. So I think that's a really cool question to kind of look at your investment strategy.
Yeah, it's fun when you can correlate it with a different avenue. So hearing the movie genre was a cool idea.
Yep. All right, let's see. Share a quirky or unexpected item you've come across during a property inspection or walkthrough. Who wants to take that one first?
I'll take this. If you don't mind, Eric, I'm going to step to the plate and swing the bat here. I'd say the most memorable thing, again, that kind of stuck out as a core memory for me was, finding bed bugs in one of the rentals that I was managing a few years ago. Yeah, nobody wants it. It's an unfortunate scenario. A lot of the times, the tenant who is there, not necessarily intentional, but has created the situation. This person had kept, cardboard boxes stacked to the ceiling. You could barely walk through the kitchen. So a little bit of hoarding going on in there. And I tell you what, I left there and threw the tennis shoes away and switched right into the flip-flops.
Yeah, that does not sound like a good time. Eric, how about you?
It was a property I was showing to some friends of mine. They were looking to expand their real estate portfolio in Albuquerque some more. And someone we knew had a triplex that they were self-managing and wanted to offload it, or they're going to fix it up, right? And we walked through this thing, and it was like an absolute bombshell in every unit. I mean, 2 of the units we walked through were just like really old, not updated well, tons of deferred maintenance, and people were living there. But then the one unit we walked into, I think there was like the 2-2 or something like that. Disgusting. The bedrooms, you walked into it, and I kid you not, it was lined with trash up to the window sills in every wall in that room. The kitchen, I didn't even know what was going on in there. It was bugs. I mean, it was so disgusting. I don't think a single light worked in the entire place, too. They were definitely using all sorts of drugs. They might have been cooking drugs as well. And we left that situation pretty quick. And the people were in the unit when we were walking around, and they were just like incapacitated. It seemed like it was unbelievable to see what conditions some people willingly live in. Yeah, it was a nightmare. So they did not buy it, and we never went back. It was great.
Yeah, it's always so interesting when you go into those situations because, like you said, it was your suspenseful movie that you talked about, but to those folks, it was a normal day.
Yeah, it was a rom-com.
Yeah, it's always interesting. And I feel like this one's an unfair question for me because before I got into the multifamily space, I was doing quite a few fix and flips. So I've walked quite a few nasty properties. But the one thing I always point out with the nightmare properties is always structural for me because I've seen hoarders, I've seen drug dealers, I've seen them, like properties you can't even go in, because they're contaminated with meth and things like that. But essentially the worst for me is always the structural stuff because I've seen houses without gutters, where the slope or the grade of the house is not in the right direction. And it just creates these huge foundational issues, and it just makes the home harder to save. And really, when it was just neglect for 20 years, and it's just so unfortunate because you have to put in another like 60, maybe to 80K of structural repairs, and it's always just a nightmare for me because I mean we can handle that kind of stuff, but it's always sad to see because it was just such a simple fix, to keep the water away from the house and everything working properly. So that was my nightmare because it's every time I go in, it's like, is it structural? Is it not structural? How's this going to go? So that's definitely mine is the structural nightmare. All right, let's see. Last question. If you could swap lives with any famous real estate mogul for a day, who would it be and what would you do? Aaron, you're up first.
I'll take it. Yeah. Favorite guy has to be Ben Mallah. I mean, he's just a huge character, really funny to watch, very practical. One of my funniest moments that I saw from him was going to a commercial space that he owned. And, several of the businesses had instituted a, parking, pay to park, right? When you come in to visit the businesses, you need to pay the park. I think it was like $2 or $4.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Mallah's favorite thing is to pull up and watch a car park and exceed the 30-minute limit on the parking spot and then run out there and give him a ticket. I don't know why. I just thought that was funny. This guy's worth a ton of money and he's out here giving people parking tickets.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that is pretty wild. That does sound like an interesting guy.
Hmm.
And we all had these questions before we came on the show today, but I remember Eric's answer for this one was pretty interesting, and I did like it. So Eric, why don't you take it away? What is your mogul of choice?
So they're not really a mogul, I would say, in real estate. They're just, I think it still holds true today. They are the largest landowner in the world, which is the British monarchy, right? So now it's King Charles, because everything that's under the British Commonwealth is owned by the royalty, like fundamentally, if you look at all the title paperwork and whatnot. So I think that'd be pretty cool, but then it also comes with all like monarchy powers and all that kind of status. I don't know if I want to be associated with all like the politics and all the drama and the back channels of royalty and things like that throughout Europe. But, from a real estate standpoint, it's a lot of cool real estate. Some of it's really prime. So I think that'd be pretty neat.
Yeah, a lot of cool estates in that portfolio.
Oh, yeah. I love castles. Like the amount of castles, the amount of estates they have, like that'd be sweet.
Yeah, it's pretty beautiful over there on the shoreline. And that reminds me of an interesting fact that I learned from Eric the other day about Zulu time coming out of Great Britain. And that headset, he's not actually in a plane now, but he is a pilot. But in real life, he is a pilot. But I learned something new about Zulu time and how it's the standard time for all planes, no matter where they take off in the world because of all the different time zones. Is that correct?
Yeah. So every time we took off and land, everything was in Zulu time, no matter where our plane was. And it's lined up with 0 time, so UTC, Universal Time Code, I think. is what that
Zulu
is,
time.
right? So yeah, it's just a way to get everything standardized, because if you're trying to compensate for all the time zone changes around the world with daylight savings time, some people don't do it. Other countries are on half-hour time zones. Like, it's a nightmare to try to do that.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. As soon as you said it, it made so much logical sense. I just never heard of it before. Zulu time. There it goes. You're interesting back of the day. All right, let's jump right into these articles. Let me make sure I can share my screen here. All right, so we thought we'd do a local one here first, here to Colorado and Denver, that hits home for us. But this one says right at the top, Polis signs bill banning residential occupancy limits in Colorado into law. And Aaron, I'm going to let you take this one over because I know you own quite a number of pad splits at this point. So this one definitely hits your investment strategy. So why don't you walk us through this one? What's this one talking about?
Yeah, no, it's been interesting to kind of see this move through the House and, get the final pass from Governor Polis here. But yeah, in my personal portfolio, I do have a couple of pad splits. That's a newer term. A lot of people refer to them as a house hack or a co-living situation. But essentially all we're saying is buying a single family residence and renting it out by the room. Prior to this bill passing, you could only have 5 unrelated parties living under the same roof. Now he has capped it, I believe, at 10. It's a little bit higher, but essentially, a lot of the homes in Denver, you do see, 2 to 3 generations living under the same roof. So this has been one of those things that's kind of already been happening. Now, mind you, a lot of those family members are related to one another. So that wasn't necessarily the impact that this was trying to have. The impact that this is trying to have is trying to help with the density and the housing needs that are here in Denver. I think we're facing the same issue as a lot of major metros.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such an, interesting topic because I feel like, even we were out the other night at a networking group and talking to other like-minded business owners. And when we brought up, this topic, people who aren't in real estate and don't have investment portfolios, kind of see it as like, I want to say like invasion of privacy, but essentially if you own a home and all of a sudden 2 or 3 homes in that block are now co-living spaces or rent by the room, I think they're worried about more of like a security issue on that side. So I guess I see it from a couple different perspectives. But I think, first and foremost, the biggest issue here is our housing crisis that we're having here in Denver, whether you're talking about affordability or interest rates or, just the type of people that are going to own homes in the Denver metropolitan area. It just becomes a very interesting juxtaposition issue because we have already so many other landlord issues that we'll get into in a little bit as well, too. But, specifically with evictions. And again, I can see it from both sides. I've seen, slumlords who rent to college students, and it's just absolutely gross when you go inside. But I see it from the other side too, with tenants taking advantage of landlords. So it's not a one size fits all question here. When you're talking about the entire population of a city and making it affordable to live, I mean, these are challenges that are going to be presented. So I just think it's an interesting topic to talk about.
And I think the key takeaway here is that, the governor is saying, hey, as long as you are running these rentals and, providing safe housing, everything is up to fire code, everything is done by the books and following the regulations within that county, then the county itself cannot ban the occupancy limit.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Eric, any thoughts on this? I know you're a new, fourplex owner in Denver now. So any thoughts on this from your portfolio?
Well, our fourplexes are all 1 bed, 1 bath, so we're not pad splitting that thing.
Sure.
We're just going to keep it as it is. But from a roommate perspective, in college, I had roommates, and to today, I'm currently trying to find a roommate for my furnished bedroom. So, for me, the roommate situation has always been great. It's allowed me to build a tremendous amount of wealth, especially while using a VA loan. So, this, I don't necessarily see a problem with it as long as everything's done up to code. I think the biggest issue people will face is probably parking situations. You get a single family house and you add 8 bedrooms in there. The property does not have 8 parking spots, I'm sure, right?
Right.
You'll have a larger issue of parking. I see this down when I visit a friend in like Cap Hill. Parking down there is awful. Like, it is impossible to find something.
Yeah.
So I think people may have to start utilizing mass transit more for that. So I think that might just be the biggest headache for most people. But as long as people are respectful of neighbors, respectful of the properties, respectful of the community, it should be fine. Density is very common in other parts of the world. The United States has a lot of land mass, so we just have that on our side. But if you look at Europe, Asian markets, density out there is crazy, and people are just used to living like that, and it's just the norm. So it's just going to be a little bit of a culture adjustment for some.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I think you brought up a good point there. As long as everything's up to code and all the rules are being followed, because I do think that there are a lot of landlords out there that are ruining it for the rest of us. Giving a bad name, to what it means to, rent a room or have a lease, because it is a small business, and essentially, if all your I's and all your T's are not dotted, the tenants aren't happy, or vice versa. The landlord is, having issues with the tenant, issues on both sides, with all these issues. So it's tough just to say a blanket statements with all these. So I think that's the biggest point here, is that there's just many people look at this from, but currently I think the biggest issue is our housing issue here in Denver. So I think this is a great alternative, to people who can't afford a house. I've had roommates before, like you said, you have roommates before. It's for everybody for sure, but I do think it's a great way for people to get into home ownership.
Yeah, I think another cool thing to see here in Denver is the apartment buildings that are downtown in the heart of Rhino, which is one of the arts and cultural centers of the city itself. And you can rent by the room in those apartments and share with people that you don't know or may not be related to. But it's a very high class, high end apartment building with a very nice pool, very nice restaurant and bar. And so I think at the highest level of this thing, that they are testing some models.
That is a pretty neat thing, that X building. I think they're plans of building another one. Like, one's open right now, right? And they're going to open another one as well too.
That's correct.
A third one too is in the works. So the second one's about to be open, and it's actually really affordable. I looked into what it would cost to have a roommate and a 2-bed, 2-bath, because you had your own bathroom in your bedroom and it was locked. It was $750 a month in Denver. I was like, that is. Yeah, the problem is everybody wants that, and it's pretty damn affordable. Yeah. So the wait list to get in is pretty long.
Yeah, we could do a whole other podcast on that in general. That's quite a thing, because I'm sure other cities are doing it, and I think, like you talked about, Aaron, I think Europe is doing it as well too. But I think we'll start seeing that as more of a trend, of the coming years. All right, let's jump into the next one here. This is another Colorado issue that just got signed. This one here says Colorado landlords will have to offer lease extensions as Governor Polis signs 4-clause eviction bills. Rick, why don't you kick this one off? Give us a little background on what's going on with some of the evictions here in Denver.
So this is going to be our first time property managing in Denver metro area. We're technically in Federal Heights, so this will be part of it. But in terms of being able to evict people, you need to give substantial cause for that. Now, the word has like a negative connotation associated with it. You're usually getting kicked out for some sort of violation or default or whatever. But it almost seems like this bill is tying into rent renewals as well, right? So you can have a lease just terminate, the date ends and then the person moves out and everything's fine. So I'm not entirely sure what was the cause behind this bill needing to be signed and why it got pushed through. Is it to prevent people from just getting kicked out with very little notice or terminated on little notice? I think maybe this could be from a lot of the month-to-month rentals, and maybe property managers are not being diligent with their paperwork and renewals and just kind of let things go for a long time, and then all of a sudden raise rents really high, and it causes issues. I'm not the background on a lot of these things, but for us, it's pretty simple, because we want to put everybody on a lease anyways. Like, we're not going to do month to month. If it is a month to month, it's going to be a short, we'll do 3-6 months, whatever, but there will be some term in there, and then at the end of it will be renegotiated. We won't just leave things in perpetuity to just carry on with no adjustment. So I'm not sure if this is going to apply to a particular situation too much.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think there is a little bit of confusion with how that's written with the eviction term, because I think what this is talking about in particular is specifically the reason why you would not renew a tenant's lease. And they're saying you have to at least offer it if it doesn't fit one of these, two or three issues. I think one of them is if you want to move back into the property, if you want to change it to a short-term rental, or if you want to do some renovations, you have to have a specific issue on why you are not renewing their lease. And I think that is a little bit of a misnomer there at the top when it says, for the eviction bills, because the eviction bills was almost talking about something different, but in a similar vein, to some of those hoarders or people who are not paying rent or who may be dealing drugs out of your house. It's in Denver, the very extensive process that you have to go through to be able to evict someone out of your house. And it's just been challenging for landlords on that side. But, like I've said before, I see it from both sides. If the landlord is being terrible, then I understand the tenant should have more rights. But if the tenants are being terrible, there's not much here to, protect the landlord in these situations. And you're getting a lot of squatters, I think, is the biggest issue. And this headline is a little confusing. I think you're absolutely right. It's not so much as an eviction, but now you have to offer them some kind of renewal. And if not, you have to disclose why.
Yeah. And I think also it's going back to the overall displacement and getting more people to stay in the unit for longer is obviously going to help some of the housing needs that we have here. And, without having that substantial cause, whether it's a lease violation, a crime occurring in the property, or non-payment of rent, you would have to have a pretty strong case.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting one coming up, but I do believe that one doesn't go into effect until May 8th next month. I think that was just signed off on, and they were pretty excited about the way that this one was worded. So, all right, let's see. All right, last article. I know we said we talk about interest rates, so here we go.
Tee it up.
All right, Fed says economy continues to expand, underlying recent shift away from any imminent cut in interest rates. Now, I know, Eric, you were pretty hot to the collar about this one because we've been talking about this all year. Are they going to go up? Are they going to go down? Where are we at with it today, Eric?
I mean, maybe I'm sticking to what I thought was going to happen, which we're not going to see decreases this year, and we may even see an increase. I'm a little skeptical of how detailed the inflation rate is being calculated, particularly with the baby boomer generation retiring. I think it's like 10 to 11,000 people are exiting the workforce every single day from that generation. And I'm not sure they're really accounting for that, nor are they accounting for like the gig workers, fractional workers, people that have fallen off the unemployment list. But then also utilities and rental prices typically lag, I think, maybe 12 months behind this calculation. So we're still, I think going to adjust anything. I think they're just going to ride this out and see what happens. The economy has not fallen apart from a higher interest rate. So they may just say, we're good to go, and we're just going to leave it for a while. I mean, the interest rate for mortgages in particular, it's still lower than it was back in the 90s and 80s. And it was like that way for a long time. So what we've been used to post 2008 housing collapse is just been, people just got used to it. It's been that way for, 15 years. And people thought that was the new standard, but things do change. And now it's going to change how people are investing, how people are buying, what they're going to do, how they're going to view real estate as an asset class. So I think there's still deals out there. They're just going to be harder to achieve, and you're going to have to negotiate a lot more. Sellers may have to become more reasonable on what they think they can sell their things for and what people are willing to pay for it price-wise. But it also opens up more opportunity for seller financing and for people to privately lend money as well. So instead of going to banks and paying ridiculous rates with all these hoops you got to jump through, you could just borrow money from another entity with less hoops to jump through with a comparable interest rate, right? So I think it opens up more opportunities for those willing to go after it.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's still going to be deals out there, right? You may have to do a little bit more digging to find those, but I think with this year being an election year, we're going to see the Feds kind of walk that tight line pretty closely as far as where they take the rates and what their intentions are.
Yeah, definitely will be really interesting to see because, especially here in the Denver area, kind of ruined our hot market for residential anyways, and then, coasting into the summer, we'll just have to see, because I do feel like there's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines. Everyone's just kind of holding their breath, waiting to see what happens next. But three of us have been in, real estate investing for quite some time now. And I don't think it's so much about waiting, it's about understanding your strategy and what you plan to do if they, go up or go down. And I do going to start seeing, especially in the commercial sector, not necessarily the commercial multifamily sector, but definitely in a lot of like retail buildings and office buildings. There's going to be a lot of foreclosures coming up here too as well. We're going to have a whole other podcast discussing the real estate market, but from both sides, that commercial and residential, it's being affected heavily. But if you can write that into your strategy and you understand the highs and lows, and you understand, buyer one, buyer two, seller one, seller two, essentially you should just be able to ride the waves. But I know a lot of fear right now, and it's the understanding is, rates aren't coming down. And I think I'm totally with you, Eric. I don't coming down. I think, at the end of the day, the banks like the money they're making. But as a larger picture, it's going to change the face of real estate over the next few years, and we'll have to just adjust as it comes. There's not so much you can plan for the unknown. You just have to be able to, again, hold tight to your strategy and understand that the interest rates will rise and fall, but at what rates, I'm not sure we can. There's no crystal ball that we can predict. And I know I say that joke a lot because I like to say I invest in stocks, rocks, and real estate. Essentially, I used to say that I don't have any crystal balls and I can't predict the future, and now I have a lot of crystal balls and I still can't predict the future. So
yeah, I will say, my firm belief is that, at least in the residential market, for the first time home buyer, the quicker that they're able to, get their foot on the ladder, the better off they're going to be.
Yeah.
I know Grant Cardone would disagree with you vehemently. That could be that's a hot take. I could opposite opinion on that, so we can do that sometimes.
Yeah, no, I love Grant, and I love some of the things that he shares, and may have a different opinion on some other stuff.
All right. Any other major comments, questions, or concerns about anything we discussed today, guys?
No, I think that Colorado and the governor here is doing a few different key moves right now to increase the available housing that we have in the city, which I think is a for everybody, like you said, as long as everything's done by the book and it's beneficial to the tenant, stay in place and continue being a good tenant for everybody. So
yeah. Absolutely. And thanks for coming in, guys. I really appreciate you a lot. If you made it this far in our video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And definitely leave us a comment. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Are there any topics you'd like us to discuss? We really appreciate your guys' feedback. So again, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for joining us today. And we'll see you guys on the next one.